and we are recording this session, and we will be sharing the recording later. Not exactly for sure when, but either later this week or early next week, we will send the recording out. So I'd like to welcome everyone to today's session. The session is on leveling up your research game. Oh, share my screen. I thought that might be helpful. Because, you know, I have a PowerPoint, but everybody, the one thing I forgot to do. There we go. Okay, now everybody should be able to see my screen. So I have my colleague Teresa with us. She's going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the chat at any time. Teresa, feel free just to jump in if any questions pop up, and we will address them as they come. So today's session is called Level Up Your Research Game, Unleashing the Power of Generative AI. My name is Jody Borgerdine, and I'm an instruction librarian here at WashU Libraries. And again, I'm joined with my colleague, Teresa Mastrodonato, who is head of instruction and student experience here at Olin Library. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that I did use Gamma, the AI tool, Gamma, to help create the slide deck layout. I created a plain black and white PowerPoint file and uploaded that unformatted slide deck containing my presentation text. I used the prompt, generate a visually appealing slide deck with images for a presentation in English about using generative AI for college research. And so what you will see on the slide deck and the layout and the design is what Gamma generated for me. So I did review this file that Gamma created, and based on this, I imported my text into the newly generated theme. So what is generative AI, or also known as GAI? So generative artificial intelligence, it is a complicated set of technologies. And while it's not necessary to have a deep knowledge of how these technologies work in order to use AI tools, I found that it really is helpful to have just a basic understanding of some of the fundamental concepts of generative AI. So what is it? What are we talking about when we discuss generative AI or use the term GAI? So it refers to technology that can create new content. This could be text, images, code, audio, video, really anything. And to put it simply, AI text generators, they work by predicting the next word in a sequence. So they do not understand your questions and what you're saying in a way that another person would. You're not really having an actual conversation with the generative AI tool. It's just predicting, it's guessing what the next word in that sequence is going to be. And a lot of AI text generators like ChatGPT, they are trained on large amounts of text that's been scraped or pulled from the internet. And this training, it's supplemented by annotation and feedback testing that's done by us humans. Now, with some exceptions, we don't have a lot of information about how the models that drive these tools are trained. A lot of that's proprietary information. We don't know how those tools are trained. We can make guesses, we can make assumptions based on what we know, but that means in most cases, users really have no way of knowing what information an AI tool has had access to. And go ahead, Teresa.
I think another thing, if you go back to that, another thing to think about is you don't know what they have information to access to. So most academic libraries have databases that we subscribe to, and unless the the company allows the AI group to actually access those databases, those articles behind what we call a paywall, the generative AI would not have access to those articles. So it's really looking at articles that are freely available out there that has access to that, and anything that is behind, if you have to use like a login to access like articles or library here at library here at WashU with your, WashU username and password, the AI would not have access to that. So that's another thing of not knowing what information they have access to.
Great, thanks, Teresa. So there are limitations and causes of concern that we need to also address and keep in mind as we're talking about and discussing generative AI tools. Most AI tools capture and reuse a significant amount of user data. So you should not, never, ever, ever, ever share private information with ChatGPT or other similar programs. All AI text generators can and often do produce plausible sounding but really false information. This is known as hallucinations. So you may have heard that phrase or term before in discussions about generative AI. And really by their nature, AI text generators will produce output that can be culturally and politically biased. Generative AI tools like ChatGPT, they have been known to generate false citations. And even if the citations represent actual papers, the cited content in that generative AI tool, it might still be inaccurate. So one thing to keep in mind is that providing false citations in research, whether that's intentional or even unintentional, that does violate WashU's academic integrity policies. And there are a number of ethical and societal concerns about generative AI. This could be from the way that these tools were created to the way that they are being applied now and also in the future. And one other concern that needs to be addressed or at least mentioned is the environmental impact that AI has. And this extends beyond high electrical usage. AI models consume enormous amounts of fossil fuel-based electricity, and that significantly contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. I saw a study from 2014 from MIT where they predicted that by 2026, data centers will be the 5th most user of electricity, putting it between Japan and France. So data centers are producing as much electricity as whole countries. Again, that was from 2024, predicting 2026, but still, that was just a very eye-opening prediction. And the need for advanced cooling systems to cool these AI data centers, it also leads to excessive water consumption, which in the times that we're in right now with water scarcity, that can have a serious environmental consequence for those areas or regions experiencing water scarcity or water issues. So what is WashU's policy on generative AI? Basically, there is no university-wide policy on using generative AI, but instead each school or department may have their own policy. And even within those schools or policies, it's up to the individual faculty, professor, instructor to determine how they do or do not want students to use generative AI. So the moral of the story is check with your professor. Don't assume that AI is acceptable. Don't assume that AI is not acceptable. Check with your professor, with your instructor, or go above to the school or department to check their AI policy. Are there any questions so far?
No questions so far, but does anybody have any questions? You can either unmute yourself and ask the question or put the question in the chat. We've got a couple people here in person too. If you've got anybody here has any questions, please feel free to ask them. We'll give it a minute.
Yeah, just a couple of seconds.
Oh, so we have a question online. Does anyone know why hallucinations occur?
Well, I am not a generative AI expert, but the reason that I can probably say that they occur is, again, generative AI is pulling information, pulling text from the internet. And again, it's trying to predict the next word or phrase in that sequence, so to speak. And so it may just be pulling inaccurate information online. We know that there's a lot of misinformation, false information online. It may be digesting that information and predicting the next word in an inaccurate manner. So that is my, again, non-expert reasoning on why I think AI could be causing those hallucinations. It's not a perfect system, so to speak, and it does not know how to discern what is accurate or inaccurate information. Again, it's just a prediction model, a prediction tool.
And Steve and Pooja put on there stuff, and with stuff where I've seen examples where they'll have like a DOI number for an article or a PubMed article ID attached to an article that they've like said that this is available, like this is like the article that you want to look at, and that like digital object identifier or that PubMed number is a real article, but it's somebody else's article. So again, they're trying to like, it's a predictive. So it's going, okay, the next, based on this word here, the word about, the next word should be this word, and it's using percentages. Oh, it once told Amanda that Pee Wee Herman was the star of Song of the South.
Oh,
thank you.
Yikes.
That's interesting. Amanda, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. So yes, it can give you false information, and we've seen a lot of like stuff with in news articles where lawyers are putting false, like stuff that, citations they've gotten from generative AI in law documents they're submitting to the court, and the court goes, these aren't real. I saw something a couple weeks ago where a person from Europe used ChatGPT to ask if they needed a visa to get into Puerto Rico. Well, they don't need a visa to get in from the country that they're in, but they had to fill out an online form. And ChatGPT didn't tell them that they needed to fill that online form in. So when they got to the airport, they're like, well, where's this form that you need to fill out? And she's like, well, ChatGPT didn't tell me I needed to do that. So it's, depending, you gotta kind of like be wary of like that it may or may not give you all the answers you're looking for. You also have to look at now, like Google, if you just Google stuff, now like the AI aspect is right at the top of any results that you get. It used to be like Wikipedia and all this other stuff, and now it's like an AI, overview.
Gemini response.
Response or something. So I really do like the one about Pee Wee Herman was star of Song of the South. Thank you for sharing that, Amanda.
That's a good one, Amanda.
That's a good one. Any other questions before we move on to using generative AI? And we'll have plenty of time at the end of the session to ask questions and have a discussion as well. So
Absolutely.
it looks like no more questions on
Okay.
mine, so go ahead.
All right, so now I want to talk about how to use generative AI. So you've probably heard the term prompts or prompt engineering or phrases like that. AI prompts, those are basically the instructions or queries that you give to that AI system to get it to produce a specific result. So prompts, they can be simple phrases or words, or they can be really complex sentences or paragraphs. So after you enter in that prompt, that AI model is going to analyze your input and then generate a response based on the patterns it has learned through its training. More descriptive prompts is going to improve the quality of the outputs. And so you should write your prompts in a way that really mimics everyday speech. That way AI tools can better understand what you are asking for. There are different models out there. One that we will actually be discussing in a future AI workshop will be clear prompts. So this was a model developed by Dr. Leo Lowe, who at the time was Dean of Libraries at the University of New Mexico. And he created a prompt model called CLEAR. And a date, but Teresa can look that up and pop it in the chat.
I'll look that up and pop it in the chat.
Because if you are interested in learning more about prompt models, especially the CLEAR model, you'll definitely want to be sure to sign up for that workshop. Generative AI does not always provide accurate, unbiased, or up-to-date information, like we just learned with Pee Wee Herman and Son of the South, and just as with any popular non-scholarly source. You need to consult and use an additional source that is credible, unbiased, and reliable. If you use incorrect information that was provided by generative AI in your assignments, in your research paper, your professional papers, you will be responsible for it. You just can't say, oops, generative AI gave me that. You still have to take responsibility for that. So until you confirm the information by checking a reliable source, always assume that it is incorrect, that it is outdated information. Verifying information is probably the most important piece of effectively using generative AI. So what can you do? Cross-check that information with authoritative sources. Look at academic journals or government and university publications. Consult multiple sources to verify information rather than a single source. Go to IMDb, go to Wikipedia to see and verify if Pee Wee Herman actually was in Son of the South. Use multiple sources. Use fact-checking tools. Websites like Snopes, factcheck.org, and PolitiFact can help you identify misinformation and inaccuracies. Also check the dates of the sources when verifying information from the generative AI to ensure that it is up to date. And this is especially important for topics that are rapidly evolving and happening and changing. Generative AI responses, those are generated by a bot. So even if you're using the information from it, you will still need to do significant editing and paraphrasing to make it into your own voice. Any work that you submit must be written by you and you only. So using AI to generate text and then submitting it as your own work, that's considered plagiarism. And generative AI, yeah, it can be a collaborator of information and ideas, but it is not meant to communicate for you. So do not directly copy and paste generative AI text into your paper. This also includes text generated by any paraphrasing software. And I would even go as far as to say, if you use Grammarly or some of those tools, do not directly copy and paste. Still review what it is being generated. Because this could be considered plagiarism because you did not write the text. Edit and customize any content or text generated to fit your needs and your own voice. You decide what generated content is relevant for your uses, and use the relevant content to determine maybe some points of discussion, but then elaborate on those points of discussion with your own writing, with your own voice. Add your own insights and add your own context to make it yours. Know the tone, the format, the audience of the writing you wish to do, you wish to communicate with. Robotic writing, kind of monotone writing, it's generally not valued. So edit any information that you use from this generative AI content to align with the expectations of your audience, of your professor, of the assignment requirements, and also the type of writing that you are creating. Do not directly quote generative AI as if it is an author. So if generative AI cites a source in their response to your question, locate that source and paraphrase or quote that author directly if it is a reliable source. If no source is provided by the GAI generator, locate a reliable source to verify that information and then use that source to cite that information. And remember, generative AI, it can give you some really good ideas to consider. And I have used it for brainstorming and kind of thinking through ideas or topics that I want to explore further. But it is your responsibility as a student, as the creator, to create the final communication or writing in order to avoid plagiarism. All right, are there any questions before?
So we had a couple questions
Okay.
In the chat. So does the generative AI provide a list of sources? And typically they don't provide a list of sources, but Steven put in there that Gemini from the Google search will often have a link next to the result that will go to the source used for that answer result. But if you use ChatGPT or some of the other ones, they typically will not have a list of sources in there. And then somebody also asked, can you repeat the fact checking tools? And Snopes was one of them. Snopes.com, I think.
PolitiFact.
PolitiFact.
There we go. Fact check. Factcheck.org.
Org.
PolitiFact.
And then Snopes.
Snopes. And yeah, with Gemini, and it's one of those that I didn't really notice until I looked a little bit closer, that so type in your Google search, it spits out results, and then the Gemini AI response is at the top of the search results list. And yes, it does cite the sources, but it's a little link icon. So unless you're specifically looking for it or realize, oh, that's the source. So look for that link icon.
It's like
tiny
next to the, I mean, the type on the response is small, but like the response where the link is even smaller than that. So it's like half the size of it. So unless you're like looking for it or know like that, oh, that looks like a link thing to go out, you'd totally miss it.
Yeah, and like I said, the little link icon that looks like a chain, that's what you need to look for. And again, that's Gemini. Other platforms may have a different icon or different way that they will show if they're the source of that information, if they provide that, like ChatGPT does not. Okay, so now I want to talk about using generative AI in the research process. And I'm going to mention some tools that you may want to explore. For time's sake, I'm not going to do a demo of these tools, but all the tools that I will mention will have kind of this free to play pricing tier. And also keep in mind that for most of these tools, you will need to subscribe to get the full bells and whistles or unlimited usage. And also, keep in mind that these tools may be here today, gone tomorrow. And all of these emerging research tools are experimental. And so you should use them with caution. And in some cases, you will see publishers and professors that will not accept papers that have made use of these tools. So, like I said earlier, generative AI can be a really good tool for brainstorming during the research process. It can help you define your general topic area. You can use, so again, you can use it to help define your general topic area. So choose your AI tool like ChatGPT or another tool and craft your prompt. Clearly specify your request. So for example, you can ask the tool to generate ideas for research questions, or maybe propose methodologies or recommend scholarly databases to explore further. Experiment and refine your prompt, building on what was helpful or even not helpful about the response that you were given. And then critically evaluate and filter those results using your human expertise, knowledge, and experience. And again, validate using credible sources. And also keep in the back of your head of being cognizant of the ethical considerations like bias, source, privacy, and citing the use of AI.
And this is very similar to your typical research.
Absolutely.
Where you're going in and you're defining your general topic. If you come in and you're like, oh, I would need to use the databases, you're developing your prompt. So I'm developing my keywords, my synonyms, which is just the shorter version of like a full prompt that you might use for generative AI. You also, in searching in the databases, you experiment and you refine your search results as well. And then you also critically evaluate. So you're using the same kind of evaluative process that you look at in the databases and articles that you might look at for using your research. The same way you're kind of like critically evaluating, filter your results, look at everything when you're utilizing Gen AI, even for just helping you with your research. So it's a parallel for this, is you still have to critically evaluate everything that you're looking at.
So some tools, Lucidchart and Claude.ai can be really good tools for concept mapping, creating mind maps. If you just want to generate topic ideas, I've used ChatGPT or even WashU's chat version of ChatGPT, again, just to kind of generate ideas, keywords, for example, that I can use brainstorming or refining my topic ideas. Just an FYI, I'm getting a message that my network connection is unstable.
I've had that before.
Okay, I know.
I've also used kind of like the ChatGPT, like as I'm not very good with like titles of workshops, to be more like kind of like effective creation of workshops. So I'll like say, this is the workshop. I'll have the description of a workshop that I'm doing similar to like this one, and say, can you give me some ideas for like great, topic, titles that I might want to use. And then it's around playing with those topics. And a lot of times I go through 3 or 4 iterations of a topic, and then I end up using like part of this one, because I'm like, oh, these sound really good. And so it's definitely that brainstorming idea to give me ideas for that. But you have to be careful as well, because some faculty, depending on your faculty member, if you're working with a faculty member, will allow you to use these generative AI for brainstorming ideas, and others will say you can't use any generative AI at all. So just always be aware when you're using, before you use this, what each individual class or your department allows.
Absolutely. And if you're not sure, do not assume, ask. Better to be safe than sorry, and ask and get clarification instead of just assuming that you can or cannot use generative AI for that class or assignment. Like I said, generative AI can be really good for generating keywords that you can use for searching in the databases. One of the best ways to really ensure relevant and comprehensive results from your library searches is to collect a good list of keywords that pertain to your research topic. So in addition to using your own knowledge and judgment, consult with your subject librarian, use the database, the source, and other experts in your field or area that you're studying. You can also use AI for kind of quick and easy help generating those keywords, especially if it's a topic or area that you may not have a lot of familiarity with, or not too familiar with kind of quote unquote the language or jargon of that field. So ask questions. Pose a question to ChatGPT asking for keywords related to your search. So for example, you might want to ask, can you suggest keywords for this topic? What are some relevant keywords for studying autism in children? Then review and refine. Examine the model's responses and pick out potential keywords. And like Teresa said, you may have to ask 3, 4 times, and maybe you kind of pull keywords from different responses. But you want to look for terms that accurately represent the core concepts in your research and try to think of what's missing in those results. And again, that's based on your own knowledge of the area or the topic. Ask follow-up questions. If needed, ask provide more keywords related to academic performance. Repeat this process as many times for as many keywords or topics that you would like. And then validate the results and consult existing literature. Cross-reference the generated keywords with existing literature in your field or a database thesaurus to ensure that your keywords are recognized and accepted within the academic community. You're going to have better luck, more success when you actually start doing the searching in those library databases. If your keywords are kind of recognized and accepted within that particular academic community. And then again, refine and expand your list until you are satisfied with that selection. Generative AI has also introduced new tools available to researchers, really enabling them to visualize connections between works or facilitate evaluation and synthesis of relevant works. These tools are best used as a supplement to the literature review process. They do not search all of the relevant literature, and they're not meant to substitute library database searching. So it's important to, again, you might get tired of hearing this, validate, validate, validate. Always verify the information by referring to the actual article or the actual source. So Research Rabbit, it's a citation-based literature mapping tool, and it provides kind of seed articles or starting articles. And this tool will then find a network, you provide kind of that seed article or that initial article. And then that tool will find a network of recommended papers, recommended articles. Semantic Scholar is going to supply underlying data for many of the other tools on this list. So Semantic Scholar provides brief summaries of the main objectives and results of papers. So again, you upload an article and it's going to provide a brief summary and main objectives of the paper. Connected papers. So with this, you search for a paper, maybe by keywords, maybe by the title of the article or paper, a DOI or another identifier. Then you're going to click a title from the resulting list, and then the site's going to build kind of a graph of similar papers in the field. Insightful. With Insightful, you'll want to use, they have a paper discovery tool that will allow you to build a network of papers from citations. They also have a literature connector tool to see how two papers are connected by the literature. And it's also important to note that many of the major database vendors like JSTOR, Scopus, Web of Science, ProQuest, they're also experimenting with AI-enabled search tools to help researchers discover sources in new ways. So with these tools, these vendors and publishers are attempting to increase the accuracy of responses by limiting the AI-generated responses to information that is retrieved using a more traditional search engine search.
You have a question online.
Okay.
Stephen wanted to know for these specific tools that you have listed here, they're more academic type stuff. Are they still prone to hallucinations, making up sources?
Yes, and I say that because any AI tool, no matter how academic, scholarly, is prone to hallucinations and making up sources. Even WashU's ChatGPT is not 100% accurate. And that's just the nature of generative AI. Because again, it's pulling in information from the web, regurgitating it, and spinning it back out based on its predictions of what you put in.
And they want to know, can these tools get behind paywalls of scholarly sources?
You know, that I am not sure. That I am not sure.
I know there are some vendors database vendors who are working with some of these like generative AI programs to, you know, kind of have their information available also there, but I'm not sure if they can get behind, if they are getting behind a paywall. So that's where you have to kind of be wary as well. So I would say and then you can also use the library databases. So, you know, as I would suggest if you're, you know, using both, you know, use both for your research to kind of back and find some stuff here and then go into the databases. And you can always, you know, double check to make sure that what you're finding in these are also maybe in the databases or maybe they're not in the databases. So it gives you like that extra available research that you may not have found through the library databases, because there are stuff out there, you know, open access that we may not, you know, see or do stuff. So it's good to kind of maybe use both. But yeah, typically they won't get behind a paywall.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, these tools should be used as a supplement and not the only method that you're going to be using to do literature searching or generating keywords, etc. There are also a number of tools that are specifically designed to summarize articles or other documents. And these tools can be useful for managing maybe a large number of articles when really you need just a basic familiarity with their content. But again, in most situations, you should still fully read sources, especially when you need a deeper understanding of the material. So explain paper. Upload a paper, highlight any confusing text, and it will generate an explanation. Humata will summarize findings, compare documents, and also highlight citations. OpenRead, you upload an article to summarize findings. You can ask the AI questions about the paper and take notes of your findings. And Scholarcy allows you to summarize, analyze, and organize your research. And it also has a research quality indicator feature. And this one is also very visual in its responses, like kind of, again, maps and graphs. So if you prefer visual outputs, that might be a tool that you'll want to use. And there are also tools that you can use to put those final touches on your paper or presentation. So if you need help copy editing and revising, you can use the spell checking and grammar checking capabilities of Grammarly and ChatGPT to copy edit your writing. Even if what you're inputting was completely self-written, and put it into Grammarly or ChatGPT to, again, get to check for grammar and spell check. Presentations and PowerPoints, tools like Slides GPT or Gamma, which I use to create this slide deck. The layout, the colors, the pictures, everything used in this presentation was based on my uploading just a blank black and white slide deck to Gamma. Infogram is a really good data visualization tool to input data, and then it will spit out some various visualizations that you can use to represent and tell the story of the data that you're inputting. You can even use some ChatGPT tools for professional and career development, including resume and cover letter writing, and maybe even interview preparation. So Kick Resume and Hunter are a couple good tools for that area. So to close, keep in mind, meticulously fact check claim. Critically evaluate all of the outputs for any possible biases that can skew the presented information. Avoid asking the AI tools to produce a list of sources on a specific topic, as such prompts could result in the tools fabricating false citations. Again, it's being trained on what we enter in and what we're asking. So that could result. It's important to always look up citations and check to make sure that they are accurate. And if you're citing information from that source, you need to cite the original source rather than ChatGPT or whatever AI tool that you're using. If it's available, consult the AI developer's notes to determine if the tool's information is up to date. And again, this is really important if you are trying to get information on a topic that's changing constantly. I looked one time, actually, I guess it was last fall. I haven't looked recently, but last fall when I did a workshop similar to this, at that time, ChatGPT's latest version was from June 2024, and I was doing this workshop September, October 2024. A lot could change, a lot of information changed even in the span of 3 months. And always remember that generative AI tools are not search engines. They simply use large amounts of data to generate responses constructed to kind of make sense according to common cognitive paradigms. So, and also lastly, again, avoid sharing any personal or sensitive information via the AI powered tools. So let's discuss.
So we did have a question.
Okay.
Lori asked, OpenRead, does it have a copyright limit on uploading only open access articles? And I went to OpenRead and I didn't see anything on there that says it only can do open access articles. It does have a, if you do the free version of it, according to their website, you get 5 articles per month that you can upload, and that's free. You get 5 times a month a paper Q&A, 5 times a month chat with OAT. Answer by OAT, that's a search. But then like if you pay, you get a unlimited number, like 100 per day, 100 per month, or 300 questions per month on a paper Q&A. And then it goes up to $20 a month where you can do unlimited usage of paper Q&A where they'll do it. So it looks like they'll do for free. It's like everything's paid. You get like 5 questions that you can ask per month on that. So there definitely is a limit on that, but I did not see any info that you can only upload open access articles. Any questions thank you, Jody, so much. That was an excellent. Any questions? We're happy to answer them. We've got about 5 minutes left of the session. If you want to put your question in the chat, or please feel free to unmute yourself. Or
if there's
questions.
Or if there's an AI tool that you've used that you want to share, feel free to share that, add that to the chat. There will be a session. Again, I'm blanking on the dates and times.
I put inside the chat, I put the workshop flyer, and
awesome.
The one on the prompt is October 15th.
And then there's one on AI tools.
Yes.
And then another one on evaluating AI information, and then another one on citing and attributing information that's generated from AI tools. So
Anne had a great question.
Mm-hmm.
How many different AI programs should you use to get a balanced response?
Oh my God. I think that's really impossible to answer. I will respond with the same answer that I tell students when they ask me, how many responses should I get? What's a good number of search results in a database? And I'm just going to say it really depends. If I'm asking a very focused question and I get 1 or 2 responses, or I'm using, I may only need 1 or 2 tools to get the information that I need. But if it's something more broad, like when I uploaded my blank slide deck into Gamma, I think this was the 5th iteration that it spit out before I was happy with the layout that it generated for me. So I think it depends. And I also used a couple of other um, kind of presentation AI tools before I settled on Gamma. Some of them I uploaded my blank, again, unformatted black and white slide deck, and it completely changed my text and offered me suggestions on what to change. And, I was like, no, I want this to be my own creation. I just want you to help me with the layout and the pictures. So again, I think it really, it depends. It depends. And again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to pop those in the chat or unmute yourself. If you do have a couple of moments, please take a snapshot of the QR code. I'm sorry, I don't have a smaller link to share for an assessment of today's session.
So we had another question. Is it true that AI can't access newspapers.com or other subscribed sources? So typically, I don't think you can because it's behind, like you have to have a username or password. It could be that the AI, whatever program you're using on AI does have like access to it. But I'm not sure. You'd have to check to see if, how reliable that AI is. But typically they don't see anything behind where you have to enter a username or password in, so they're not searching that. They're looking for open resources, and some of the stuff is listed as open. Census data is considered, open, so it may be pulling information from the census data, and other, open data. Some newspapers, have stuff where you can, it'll pull stuff from like genealogical records and stuff, that might be open. But I would say, I'm not sure. I would think, especially our databases, the academic databases, most likely they are not being accessed. And then newspapers.com probably would be very similar, because I think you have to have a login for that, and you're paying for access for that. So those subscribed sources. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming to the opening session of our AI workshop series. I put in the chat the flyer for the next series. We're holding them every other Wednesday at noon. Please feel free to come to any or all of them that you want. We will record. We are recording these, and we will have them posted someplace on our library website. That we can, that you can then access and re-share them, or if you know somebody who might be interested in, learning more about this, they can watch this as well.
And we will, it's just been a chaotic beginning of the semester. So
really been chaotic.
Once we figure out where these recordings are going to live and get them housed there, we will send out a link to everybody that registered to access those recordings.
Yes.
And you can also use AI to create cartoon images of yourself, which I will admit is very fun. Can go down a big rabbit hole and spend an hour creating artistic renderings and versions of yourself. Are there any other last questions or comments before we close out the session?
Again, thank you everyone for coming. Please again, join us for any other sessions that interest you. And again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was helpful.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Ready?